Welcome to the Trader Vision 2020 free trial video series. My name's Ed Carter, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm the designer behind Trader Vision. Along with my partners Rick Sadler and Doug Campbell, we're the people that are bringing you the Trader Vision 2020 software. In today's video, I'm going to take you through the first half of setting up the application. Specifically, we'll talk about a general overview of Trader Vision. We'll talk about the application setup in general. We'll go through account setup and managing those accounts. And finally, we'll do a summary and talk about future steps in this series. With that said, let's get started. Okay, as you'll recall, every time we open Trader Vision, we'll get the dashboard view screen. Let me just go over some of the components of the application in general. You'll note these tabs at the top. Each major section of the application has its own tab. And as I said, will be dropped to the dashboard view by default every time we open the application. In the header of the application, you'll notice that there are three logos. One for hit and run candlesticks, one for right way options, and one for the Trader Vision program itself. Each of these is a clickable link and will take you to the appropriate website page for that particular item. You'll also notice that there are four buttons. The FAQ button or FAQ will take you to a web page that is loaded with information about the application and different features and questions that someone might ask about the application. The manual page really is a manual tutorials page. I highly recommend this. It contains written guides, including a 90-page user manual that's illustrated with screenshots, as well as about a dozen overview videos. So if, for example, you don't want to wait for the next video to arrive in this series, you can go to this manual tutorials page and skip ahead. The support button will take you to the support ticket page where you can enter a support ticket. You can get to each of these buttons also through the menu on the Hit and Run Candlesticks website. The final button is the help button, and that will give you application specific information such as what are the warning colors, how are the shares to buy or sell calculated, and so forth. The last thing on the header that I want you to notice is this area right here below the help button. In that area, you will be given notification when there is an update available for the program. You will also receive a pop-up box that will tell you that a new version is available, and it will automatically start the download unless you have security software that is preventing that from starting. If for any reason the download does not automatically start, you can click the link that will pop up here in this location and start the download manually. Our process does not automatically install the downloaded program. It just downloads it automatically. And the reason for that is you might be entering or adjusting a trade, and we don't want to make the assumption that we can just shut the application down and run the installation for you. So you can run that installation program at your convenience after you've finished your work. One other thing I want to cover is down here at the bottom of the application. You'll notice this little indicator that says online. Sometimes it will say offline. This indicates the status of the link through the internet to Yahoo Finance, which is the source of our price data. And you'll notice this little colored indicator light beside online, and that will flash periodically to a bright green. There you go. What that is telling us is at the time it's flashing, it is doing a price update. That is basically what I want to cover on the overall application. So with that said, let's go on to setup. In setup, you'll notice that there are several sub-tabs within the setup tab itself. We're going to start with the application sub-tab. The first thing you should notice is this is the place you always look, setup, application, to tell you which version of the software you are currently running. This is where your license number will be displayed as well as your username and the email associated with your account. The next feature I'd like to talk about is the configuration for how to calculate the shares to buy or sell. We offer two options on how to make that calculation. The first one is by the difference between the entry price and a stop loss price. In other words, the maximum dollar risk that you're willing to risk on a position. To give you an example, let's say that I specify, and this is a specification that's made at the account level, we'll get to that in a little while, but let's say that I specify for an account that for every trade I'm willing to risk $250 per trade. Let's say that the stock's entry price is $10 and the stop loss price that I enter is $9. There's a $1 difference between that $10 entry and $9 stop. So this calculation under this setting would tell us that the $250 I'm willing to risk divided by a $1 difference between entry and stop loss means that I can buy 250 shares. And that's how the calculation would be done. The other option that we have is to size all of our positions the same dollar amount. Some people, for example, want to have all of their trades at $10,000. And so if we select total dollars for a position, what would happen is that in the example I gave earlier, we said we're going to spend $10,000 per position, and the entry price was $10, so we can buy 1,000 shares. You'll note that there's a large difference between those two calculations. One would tell us 250 shares based on the amount of risk we're willing to take. The other will tell us we can buy 1,000 shares based on the fact we want every position to be the same size. You make that selection, then you click Save Changes, and that would show you your configuration is saved, and that has recorded your choice there. The next feature I would like to talk about is the application colors and then of course the font family and size. This is something I'm particularly proud of. Did some research and found that about 20% of people have some color blindness. It may be slight, but they do have some difficulty distinguishing between some sets of colors, be it a red-green or a blue-red or a yellow-green. There are various types of color blindness. What we've done is we've made all the colors within the application completely customizable to your preference. So you will note that my colors are different than the default colors that come with the system. What I have done is clicked on this color for background, and I have chosen a different color that I wanted to use. You can use any of these basic colors, or you can use any preset. In fact, you could input the specific RGB values if you have some very specific numbers that you like that color. You can play with the hues within a color family on this column. Once you've found the color that you want for your background, you click OK, and that has been saved. You can then do the same thing for flag fields and again for calculation fields. Clicking OK, and it would set the value for you. In the same area, you can set the warning fields. So in this case, a low risk warning I have set to a yellow background with a red font, and this is an example of what it looks like. A medium risk is a pink background with a yellow font. That's what that looks like. And a high risk, red background, yellow font, and that's what that looks like. And again, to change any of these, you click them and you can pick some other color. Setting of the font family and font size is something you'll need to play with. For every different computer monitor, video card, and operating system setup, there will be a different combination that works best for each individual user. The way I've found best to play with the options here is to find a large set of text. For example, this line right here. You can play with any font that's on your operating system. Select that family, and you'll notice the fonts all changed. And in this case, it made this line entirely too long. So at font size 12, that font family is not going to work. I move it all the way down to font size 8. It's still not quite working, but it's a lot better. And I have to decide whether or not I can live with that or whether I want to try a different font family. For my personal preference and my personal equipment setup, my monitor size, monitor resolution, video card resolution, and operating system settings, I'll prefer to use Calibri font size 12. One other tip that I want to mention is that many people within their operating system, for example within Windows, will have specified that they want the text to be 150% or 200% size. If you have done that, selecting any font family and then selecting a font size of, let's say, 12 will not really matter because it will display the font size as 24 if you've specified 200% text size. So again, that's another factor that will go into what font family and what font size work best for your particular computer setup. Once all of your changes are made here, you click Save, and those configurations have been changed. Two other things that I want to cover on this application setup page. The first is setting a password. Not everybody needs a password. I personally don't have other people using my computer. It's not in a public area, so I have no password on my Trader Vision setup. Other people will need to have one, and you can certainly add one here. You would just enter a new password, confirm it with the same password, click Set, and there you go. Next time you open Trader Vision, you will need to enter that password to get in. If you do set a password, please write it down and keep it someplace safe. While we can help you get in if you have forgotten your password, you don't want to have to wait on contacting us and then us getting back to you just to be able to get into your application. So write that down and keep it someplace where you can get to it if you forget. If at any time you decide you no longer want to have a password, you would come in and enter your old password to verify that it's you. You would just leave blank the new password and the confirmation of the new password. Leave those two fields blank and click Set, and that would remove password protection from your application. The last thing that I want to mention is the Deactivate button. This is used exclusively for situations where you're moving your application from one computer to another. For example, let's say that you have purchased a new computer. You would click Deactivate Trader Vision 2020. It would ask you if you're sure. You would say yes. I don't want to do this now, but if you clicked yes, it would ask you, do you want to do a backup? You would definitely want to do a backup. That would then walk you through the process and create a complete backup of your application. It would then go out to the server and deactivate your license. You could then go to another computer, install Trader Vision just as you installed it on this first computer, register your license number, and it would activate that license number on the new computer. At that point, you would go to the Trade Log tab, the Backup Restore button, and do a full system restore and restore that backup that you just did when you were doing Deactivate. That is a very simple process to walk you through deactivating and then reactivating on a new computer your version of Trader Vision. Let's move on to Accounts. On the Accounts tab of Setup, you'll notice that there's a standard layout that will apply to the rest of the Setup tabs. The field on the left will show all of your entries within the database. On the right will be all the data that we can then edit and change or that are the defaults. In this case, I have already set up a bunch of accounts when doing different demonstrations and so forth. Trader Vision will come with one sample account for you, and you can then set up as many accounts as you have. For example, we have users that are in Canada, and they trade their Canadian stocks in one account, and they trade US stocks in a separate account. I have other people who trade different styles. For example, they day trade in one account and they swing trade in a second account. That way they can keep their performance segregated and they're not trying to come up with an average performance over day trades and swing trades. To add a new account, you simply click New Account. It provides you with a blank line. You then give it a name. Create an opening balance. In this case, let's say we've got a $100,000 balance. Since there have been no transactions, the current account value has not populated yet. We will then put in a comparison symbol, a comparison index or ETF, but essentially it's a symbol against which you want to benchmark yourself. So, for example, if you trade mostly small caps, perhaps you want to benchmark yourself against the Russell 2000 or the IWM, which is the ETF that tracks the Russell 2000. Under commissions, we can have several different types of commissions and combinations thereof. For example, perhaps we have a $4.99 per transaction commission, and then we may also have a half-penny per share commission on top of that. And on top of all that, the brokerage has said that regardless of the fact we're charging you $4.99 per trade and half a penny per share, we're still going to charge you $7.99 minimum. So if those two numbers do not add up to $7.99, we'll charge you $7.99. If they add up to more, we'll charge you that more value. The same thing could be true. You don't necessarily have to have a dollars per transaction. I know some brokerages will just have a penny a share, and they too may or may not have a minimum commission. And it could be any value. In the shorting cost portion of commissions, this is the loan rate that you're paying to borrow shares. And in this case, let's just say that it's 2%. And as with any broker I'm aware of, they use a 360-day year. So you're paying 2% for 360 days. They also require a margin multiple. This is to protect them from bad loans. For example, they may require that you keep 2 times the value that you are borrowing from them in your account in liquid assets to protect them in case the price of a shorted stock goes up hard. For argument's sake, let's just say 2, and that will be different for every brokerage and what their view is of every account. In the default section then, we can specify the default direction. Long is the standard. Most people trade long. However, if you have an account that is used largely for shorting, you can specify short as your default direction for trading. This field, as you'll remember from the application tab, we specified that I wanted to use the maximum risk or the maximum dollar loss between the entry and stop. So that's where I would specify the $250 that I talked about. You could specify 100, you could specify whatever your risk tolerance is, but that's where I would specify that. If I had chosen to have all my positions the same size, that label would be different, and this is where I would put in the $10,000 position size that we talked about, or $5,000, whatever dollar value you would use. The planned trade duration field, that is used exclusively for estimating the cost of shorting. It is used to calculate the cost of the loan. You're paying, in this case, 2% per 360 days. So if I say I'm planning to be in a trade 360 days, then it's going to calculate for every short trade that I'm paying 2% of the cost of the trade as part of the commissions. That's the cost that I would pay for the loan. If I'm planning to be in the trade 30 days, it would calculate that I'm paying 1/12, 30 divided by 360, of that 2% for the cost of borrowing those shares from the broker. That's going to be a very small number and possibly insignificant unless you're in a trade for a long time. Swing traders are typically not in a trade 360 days or 30 days. They're maybe in a trade 10 days or 15 days. And as you can imagine, 10/360th of 2% is not much. So it is there to be calculated because it is a valid cost, but in many cases, it's going to be an insignificant portion of the commissions that you'll be paying. Something else that I want to make you aware of is that if you have accounts that you decide you no longer want to have, you've closed the account as an example, you can highlight it and you can remove the account. Now, the caveat to this is that if you have trades for an account, you cannot close it until those trades have been assigned to a different account or deleted from the system. The reason being, if you deleted the account and those trades were still out there, they would be floating around with no account assigned to them. Alternatively, if you decide instead of deleting it, I just want to hide it, I don't want to see it in the drop-down menu out in the rest of the application, you would highlight that item, and here you would click Hide from Drop-Down Lists. As you'll note, that account is now grayed out on the entry side. Out in the application, it is no longer part of the list. I'm going to save my changes, go to Trade View, and I pull down accounts, and you'll see that it's no longer listed here. If I go back to Setup, select this account for demo, deselect Hide from drop-down lists, save again, I can go back to Trade View, and now account for demo does show up. The last thing I want to show you is that if you decide you want this list to display in a different order, you can use these green arrows here to reorganize, reorder them in any order that you want to have them display. Save your setup, go out to Trade View or any of the other sections, and you'll now see that they display in that order. Congratulations, we've reached about the halfway point in our Trader Vision setup, and I believe that's all we want to cover for today. Let's do a quick recap of what we've covered. We talked about Trader Vision 2020 as a general application, all the header features such as the clickable links and buttons where you'll be notified of future updates. We talked about general application setup, including passwords, customizable colors and fonts. We talked about how to set up the way the application will calculate the shares to buy or sell. We talked about how you can deactivate Trader Vision if you need to move it to a new computer. In account setup, we talked about adding a new account, about editing existing accounts, and the ability to change things such as the various ways we can calculate commissions, the various costs related to shorting, the default values that the application will use for that account. Finally, let's talk about the remainder of this series. In the next video, we'll cover the remainder of setup, and in videos that will follow shortly after that, we will go through goal setting, entering trades, managing trades, and then on to performance review, finally closing the circle on our continuous improvement trading process. I want to thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoy Trader Vision, and I look forward to talking to you soon.